Hey everyone, welcome back. Happy Tuesday. I appreciate your guys being so understanding on the days that I am out. You guys very well know the expectations, and remember that I am never out because I don't want to be in the classroom. I actually hate being away from you guys. I'm always out because I am trying to put you guys first and learn some awesome things to bring back, such as those VV bucks and all these other incentives and such. So please be on your best behavior as always. And you guys know how things are run in my classroom, so don't make me look bad. But anyways, your warm up for today, as always, 5 to 7 sentence response, a full paragraph. If you don't know what to explain, just over explain. Okay, so yesterday we started talking a little bit about the history of Chicano literature and the Chicano movement. We started in about the late 1800s in Mexico and made it all the way to the 1930s in the United States. But based off of that conversation, we're going to be starting to learn about the LA student walkouts, the protests that happened in 1968. Some of you guys will be going on a field trip to learn even more about it. And then we're going to be reading a lot of Chicano literature in the next few weeks. But based on that, I want you to think about this. So the word Chicano, as Raymond Paredes explains, it refers to people of Mexican ancestry who have resided or lived permanently in the United States for an extended period of time. Chicanos can be native-born citizens or they can be Mexican-born immigrants who have adapted to life in the United States. It all depends on how people identify. You can either choose to identify as a Chicano or you can choose to not identify. But do you think that you know any Chicanos? And this is my question for you guys in your warm up. And in what ways do you think that they've adapted to life in the US? And if you want to, if you identify as a Chicano yourself, explain it. What does that mean to you? Okay? How do you think you have adapted or your family has adapted to life in the United States? Are you one of those people that have families who have lived in California for generations? Okay? What has that been like? What is it like? So take about 10 minutes to write about it. The sub can go ahead and pause the video right here. And then when you guys are ready, like I said, shouldn't take more than 10 minutes, then you guys can come back and press play because I have important information about the field trip. Okay, so tomorrow we have a field trip. If you turned in a permission slip, you are expected to be here. You're expected to show up. It will be a fun day. I think I talked about it with you guys already. We're going to be learning a lot. We're going to be doing a lot. But please meet out front at 6:30 a.m. The bus will leave at that point. If you are not on the bus at 6:30, we're not waiting for you. Okay, I will not and we will not be providing food for you. Please bring about $20 for food. We're going to be hanging out, and I want to show you guys where we're going to be hanging out using Google Earth at the LA Plaza de Cultura y Artes. Okay, so it's this building right here. Okay, notice that around this area there are a lot of other museums and monuments. Okay, when you have time for yourself, I encourage you to check these out. The America Tropical Center is actually a really interesting painting that was covered up in the 1960s around the time of civil rights movement because it was deemed to be very controversial. And then recently they uncovered it. Okay, and it has been preserved through the whitewashing that was put over it. So if you have a chance, go check it out. But we're going to be hanging out right here. This right here is a historic Olvera Street. This is the oldest, this is called the Avila Adobe, the oldest house still standing in LA. And it pretty much depicts or tells you how life was like back in the 1800s when California was established. But all throughout here, Okay, all these little things right here, they're little stands with vendors who sell little figurines and stuff that you can take home. And then right in here somewhere, I don't know if I can show you, but right in here, there's my favorite restaurant that's called Mr. Churro. They have burritos, they have churros, they have all sorts of goodies that you can eat and purchase. Pretty reasonably priced. Right here, there's a famous taco stand. They are famous for their potato tacos, so please check that one out if you have a chance. But all throughout here is historic things that you can check out. The oldest firehouse in LA is right here. So you're going to have plenty of time, about an hour or so, to just walk around this particular area only. You will not go farther than this. Also, I need to go over some rules. Yes, here it is. Some rules that were sent over by the museum itself. And I want to be clear about this. They require that you remain with us at all times. Also, this second point, and I want to be super clear about this. Whoops. Oh, come on. Okay. I'll do it right here. It says cell phones should be put away during the tour and the workshop. When we come in, when we show up, I will not be taking your phones from you. They have an area where you can lock up your belongings. You will leave your phone in that area. If I see anybody with a phone during the workshop when they should not, I will be taking your phone for the rest of the time there. If you do not want to give me your phone, then I am going to be calling home and I will be sending you home. I am not putting up with any tomfoolery, with anybody acting like they don't know how to behave in public. Okay? It's only for those 2 hours of our workshop. After that and before that, you may have your phones. Okay? We are to be respectful and we are to always follow their rules. Okay? There is no photography. You are to be respectful of art. You are to be respectful of our tour guides. Okay? Like I said, it is going to be a fun time, but it will not be fun if you don't know how to follow the rules. Okay? Right around here, there's also a very interesting, maybe I can zoom all the way in, very interesting little monument here. I believe it's right around here, of that is dedicated to the people who lost their homes and lost their livelihoods during the era of repatriation, which we learned about. Okay, so you might want to walk through here and check it out. This garden was created as a memorial to the indigenous people that were buried here historically and whose graves are now right under all these buildings that were built by colonists and the Spanish. Okay, so there's a lot of history here. There's a lot for you guys to check out. Okay, the Chinese American Museum, super interesting. Okay, but anyways, if you are not fourth period, so first and fifth period at this point, you may put your stuff away and you are going to watch a movie. As you are watching this movie, you are going to fill out these movie questions. That assignment is worth 150 points. I'm not kidding. It is worth 150 points. And every single one of those questions can be answered as the movie goes on. Okay? It goes in order from beginning to end. Okay? So you are not sitting around, not doing anything, and not choosing to watch the movie. The movie is on the exhibit that we are going to be visiting on Wednesday. So if you're not going with us, I expect you to learn about it regardless. And if you are going with us, you should learn about it so that when you show up, you know exactly what they are talking about and it makes more sense. Okay? So please do that movie guide, turn it in before you leave, and then get it back when you come back tomorrow. Okay, so fourth period, you have some notes that I want you to continue taking that we didn't have a chance to get to yesterday. So go ahead and take out your notebooks, and where we left off yesterday with our notes, that's where we're going to pick up. And it's the same thing as yesterday. The yellow are the important parts that I definitely want you to write down. Everything else, if you have time. And you do not have to write everything word for word. So yesterday we left off talking about the hacendados. And we talked about how they were the 1% and they were the people on top in Mexico who invested a lot of money and who had indentured servants. Actually, all of the indentured servants there were people who were of indigenous or mestizo descent. Okay, so that led to a lot of injustice and inequality, a lot of racism, if you will, even in Mexico. Okay, so what was going on during that time on our side of the border in the United States? If you guys remember, we talked about the Mexican-American War in 1846. Okay, this led to the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, which essentially was where the United States was able to purchase California, New Mexico, Nevada, Utah, Arizona, Colorado, Wyoming, Oklahoma, and Kansas. Okay, part of that treaty also stated that the people who were already living in these territories right here, who were essentially Mexican until that treaty was signed, that they would be able to keep their belongings and they would be able to stay in their land. They didn't have to move. They wouldn't be deported, and that they would gain U.S. citizenship. So this was established through this treaty at the end of this war in 1846. So anyone who was Mexican living in these territories, including us, California, they would be now automatically U.S. citizens. Okay? You got to remember, California had been colonized by the Spanish. I know you guys learned about Spanish missions in 4th grade. Okay, those are important and critical because it meant that at that time, Spanish and English were both the official languages of California. In 1846, with this treaty, that completely changed. Okay, after that time, and I had you guys take notes on the Great Depression, but after that time, the United States started sending men to fight in World War I. So what the United States did is that they invoked the Immigration Act because they wanted to be sure that there was people who were able to work in the United States because they were losing so many men at the in the war. So what happened was that anybody who was foreign was able to come to the United States to work, okay, to legally work primarily in agriculture. So, or in the railways and other industries like factories and such. Because they were here for an extended amount of time, some just eventually kind of stayed and started to build their lives. So this is when you get a whole bunch of European immigrants over in New York City, people like the Irish and the Italians, who at that point were not really welcomed openly. There was a lot of racism against them. And then on our border over here, we had a lot of Asian people and Mexican people who were legally coming to work in the United States. But then in 1929, that's when the Great Depression began, and people lost their jobs, right? There was a market crash. So they decided that they were going to create jobs by getting rid of anyone, particularly in California, with a Mexican-sounding last name. So they didn't have to prove that they were or were not Mexican. Just if they sounded like they were going to get rid of them. So that leads us to the 1930s, repatriation. So because there was so much economic struggle and racial resentment, that means that there was an increase in xenophobia. People didn't like that people who were not originally, quote unquote, from the United States were taking away their jobs, especially in a time where so many people were losing their jobs and there was so much economic struggle. People were very poor. So you have this guy, Herbert Hoover, who was elected to president. He was a moderately successful businessman, and he promised American jobs for Americans. And he made good on that promise by slashing immigration by nearly 90%. He got rid of that Immigration Act and didn't allow anybody to come in to work legally at all. But what happened, especially on our side of the country, is that in the 1920s and 1930s, there was a wave of illegal and unconstitutional raids and deportations that basically removed as many as 1.8 million men, women, and children. And this was done unconstitutionally. People were taken and ripped from their homes, and this was known as repatriation. So Some of you guys who have maybe been to LA, this is LA Union Station. People were essentially ripped out of their homes and told they had to leave or else. So this is a whole bunch of families in LA Union Station ready to go to Mexico, which might have been somewhere that they may have never been at. So